Hello and welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another video. In this one, myself and George from Ingenuity Fantasy, which if you don't know about Ingenuity Fantasy, check out the link in my description, ingenuityfantasy.com, all sorts of good stuff. There's articles on differentials and captaincy, there is match stats from Opta, there is this transfer wizard where you put in what budget you've got and what position you want and it will give you a rank list of players to consider. And then there are these player rankings which myself and George will be running through today. So 6 categories: cheap defenders, premium defenders, cheap mids, premium mids, cheap forwards, premium forwards. We'll be ranking our top 10 in each category. So let's get into it.
Hi guys, welcome back to the FPL player rankings series with myself and Brad. Quite a while since the last one. Been one of the longest breaks I think I can remember. But yeah, anyway, we will get stuck in straight away with the cheap defenders. Now, it will come as no shock to see a pair of Newcastle players at the top. That is in no small part down to the double. And, you know, Newcastle have, I think it's a potential 6 games, was it? Something like that?
It's a definite 6 games in the next 5 weeks, I think.
Yeah. Definite 6 games in the next 5 weeks. Oh yeah, because we're not in the FA Cup. So
and neither at Ipswich, who is your game week 34 opponents.
Yeah, and also, you know, Newcastle's fixtures are great as well. So, you know, at the moment, if there is any hot property team-wise, it is definitely Newcastle. Now, there is a bit of discussion around what the best cheap piece of that Newcastle defence is. So the two that, you know, fall within the cheap defender category are Burn and Livramento. Brad has Livramento 1, I have Burn 1. I think you could definitely make the argument for both. You know, Livramento will be getting forward a lot and he'll be putting more balls into the box. But Dan Burn, the reason I've got Burn at 1 is that set piece threat. I think at the moment as well, Dan Burn is having his moment in the limelight. You know, the England call up, the Carabao Cup final goal. Everyone is obsessed with Dan Burn, and I think that will translate itself into even more set piece opportunities. You know, we'll just aim set pieces at Dan Burn's head, so that's why he's there for me.
Yeah, there's really not much between them, to be honest. It's kind of a classic case of whether you prefer more open play threat from the fullback or whether you prefer more set piece threat from a centre back, and most of the time it's very close. This is no different, really. The minutes for both of them at the moment are just good because Hall is out for a while and Botman's had surgery, I want to say.
Botman's out for a while as well.
They're both done for a bit, so minutes shouldn't be a problem. They're both good, and there's really not much between them.
Yeah, but you know, if you do want to sort of, you know, ride the boat a bit more and have some fun, then just pick the big Dan Burn. You know, absolute legend. And then also, so, you know, given Newcastle are doubling, you know, you'll also see that Palace players are quite high as well. I mean, it's slightly harder to, you know, if you are going to go in a direction, you should go Newcastle players, because even though Palace are doubling as well, they are still in the FA Cup, so there's a bit more doubt around, you know, how much you get out of them, and also their fixtures are way worse. So, you know, unless you have Burn or Livramento or you're maxed out on Newcastle players already, we generally recommend going for Newcastle players. But who is the Palace option for you if you were to go Palace?
I think if budget is no problem, then I do think that Mitchell is the cheap guy to go for. Obviously, Munoz will be talked about in the premium defenders. He's definitely the one to go for. But in terms of budget ones, I do think it's still Mitchell. 4.8 is quite a lot for what he is.
Yeah.
But he does offer plenty more going forward than the 2 centre-backs do. The 2 centre-backs offer very, very little going forward, realistically, which is actually why they're not in my list. If we find out that Palace lose against Fulham in the FA Cup, then that means that Palace would have 6 fixtures within the next 5 game weeks, then those 2 defenders would definitely be in my list, but at the moment we can't know that. So I do think Mitchell's the one if you have the funds, but at the same time I don't think it's actually worth spending the extra 0.3. I think just go LaCroix, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's why I've got
I don't know how you say his name.
I think Lacroix. I'm gonna go for Lacroix because he's French. But yeah, I think that's probably that. I mean, that's why you see him in my list, just because he does offer probably the best value into the Palace defense. And if you are going to split hairs, I mean, you're talking about a minute difference, but Lacroix offers the teeniest bit more in the attacking sense than Gahey does. So yeah, I mean that's the direction I would lead there. And then another important, another good player, and one that I think we'll see popping up in quite a lot of wildcards this week. Not least he's a 4 million defender is Agbadou. So I think Brad, you mentioned you'd actually brought him
I
in.
brought in the double. I brought in Aït-Nouri and Agbadou last
Oh
week.
really?
Yeah.
You've got double
I went
Wolves.
double Wolves
Yeah.
defence. Obviously, it didn't pay off against Southampton, but they've got West Ham at home now, so I mean, guaranteed clean sheet, right? And then and then Ipswich away. Like the fixtures are just good for the next few. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's the only reason that anyone outside of Aït-Nouri, Wolves wise, is worth talking about because their fixtures are so good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's hard to argue with any player with those fixtures costing 4 million. So if you are looking for any sort of enabler, if you are on wildcard, Agbadou is one of the best shouts in that sense. So yeah, yeah, definitely it's a great pick there from Brad. And then so premium defenders, you'll notice again continuing on with the Newcastle theme, Trippier and Shaw. So we mentioned Trippier a couple of weeks ago actually, and the reason he's there. It's a shame because the amount Newcastle they've got doubles, they've got great fixtures, and he will be on set pieces. So theoretically, the conditions could not be better for quite a lot of points out of Trippier, but unfortunately, he's just not been that great. So and he is a tad expensive. So even though I think he is in line for a lot of points, he just is. It's quite an investment for someone who seems to have lost a step. But yeah, I don't know where you land on that.
Yeah, I'm less bothered about that. For me, it's more the fact that I think if I'm tripling up on Newcastle, I'm looking elsewhere. I'm looking at a different three. I'm looking at Isak, obviously.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking at
Burn, Gordon.
Yeah. But Burn, Gordon, Livramento. If I'm on wildcard, I maybe look at Pope, but
maybe look at Murphy as well.
Yeah, to be honest, or Murphy. Yeah, that's what I mean. There's just too many other better value options than Trippier right now.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to buy into, but the reason we do have him 3 is because the conditions are really really good for him to score points. So if you do have it within your budget, he could be a really nice differential option because the ceiling really is there for him points wise. And then so that leads us on to Munoz. Now Munoz he's a bit of a conundrum at the moment because the player and the profile are absolutely fantastic, and he does have that guaranteed double in 32. But I'm just a bit scared of Palace's fixtures, and I think that may be where is that where you land as
They're
well?
bad. They really are bad. I mean, not this week. Southampton away this week is great.
Oh yeah,
but if people are wildcarding in game week 31, which a lot of people are, I maybe am myself, that's the perfect time to consider whether you need these Palace guys. I mean, you probably do want them anyway because they double in 32, but the double is Newcastle away, City away, so it's not ideal. And then a couple of weeks later, if they do play in game week 34, it's Arsenal away. It's just rough. It really is rough. But at the same time, they do have a double game week, so it's very difficult to ignore a double game week no matter how bad the fixtures are. I mean, look at people were saying the same thing when Liverpool and Everton doubled, and everyone was like, okay, yeah, grab Liverpool players, of course, but Everton's double is rough, so why grab them? But then Beto went and did what Beto did. So even with a bad double, points can still be got.
Yeah, I think what we're looking at here is we're looking at a situation with quite a low floor, but also quite a high ceiling for bringing in Munoz, because there's every chance you bring him in, and just because of where he plays and the position he's in, He just bags loads, or there is the chance that Palace get absolutely smacked during that stretch, and he ends up scoring very low points. So there's a big swing potential there with Munoz. He's a high risk, high reward. I think if you're looking at him, especially on wildcard. And then so that leads us on to player who's he's been returning in the attacking sense, but I think slightly less trust in Bournemouth now, and that's Kirkez. So Kirkez sliding down both of our lists. I think that's in no small part down to Bournemouth defensively not looking as solid as they once did.
I'm not that convinced they ever looked that defensively solid in the first place, to be honest. But
yeah,
it's more that at the moment they're still good. I mean, Ipswich at home in 30, West Ham away in 31, Fulham at home in 32, then Palace. The next 3 or 4 aren't so bad. It's after that it does get pretty bad. So I think the Bournemouth players will just gradually slip down our lists as these weeks go on. For now, they're still fine for the next few, but not necessarily long term.
Yeah, exactly. So if you do, like I said, if you do have a lot of transfers in hand, and you would like to maybe get one of them in for the short term, then Kirkez is great. But if you need this transfer to be slightly longer term, then there just are better options at that price at the price point.
Yeah.
That rounds out the premium defenders and indeed the defenders section. And we will see you again shortly for the midfielders. Right, welcome back to the midfielder segment. We will get started straight away with the cheap mids. It will be no surprise to see the Palace boys near the top of this list. So, I did previously have Sarr ahead of Eze, but that was while Mateta was out. So, I'm quite surprised at the speed at which Mateta's come back, to be honest. But yeah, we just saw Sarr benefit quite a lot from Mateta being out. He was further forward, but now Mateta's back. I think Eze is probably the route to go if you are going to target Palace.
Yeah, I think he always was, to be honest. I think he's just a bit more. He's a bit more consistent than. Well, he's definitely more consistent than Sarr. We know that because Sarr gets like a random 15-point haul and then does nothing for months. But I just think that the fact that Eze is potentially on some penalties when Mateta's not on the pitch. Now Mateta will be on the pitch more, obviously, given that he's back, but there is times when Mateta does come off and Eze will be on pens for a little bit. He's on other set pieces as well, so I just think there's more routes to points.
Yeah. It's like I say, I think before, it was a bit harder to split, but I think, if you do want that security and you haven't got the patience for Sarr's streaks, then Eze's definitely the route to go there. Otherwise, if it wasn't for the double, I think you probably would see the Bournemouth boys slightly higher to the top even. The Clivert and Semenyo. Again, they're quite hard to split. But as Dean Huyson said, if you are going to go for one of them, go for Clivert because of the penalty presence. And then so Jacob Murphy. Now, my relationship with Jacob Murphy is quite complicated. Every time I include him in my list or give him praise or say he'd be a great option, he then goes and bombs. But every time I leave him off my list, he will end up getting some good returns. Now, naturally, because of Newcastle's fixtures and the double, it's impossible to leave him off the list. Where do you land on Murphy? Is this someone you'd bring in?
I like him. It's taken me a while to get there with him.
Yeah.
I don't really know why either, because he's just been getting great minutes for a fair amount of time now. But yeah, I do like him. I think that if you're on wildcard, he should be one that you consider, to be honest. Even if you're not on wildcard, I guess. But a lot of people will be on wildcard either this week or next week, I think. So I do think he's one to consider just because that 5 million price point is very good and you can play him in a lot of weeks coming up. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's going to be most key. Especially for those people who, some people may be using wildcard early. Some people maybe have already used their free hit in 29. The sort of players you'll be looking to target are these players who are going to max out their fixtures consistently rather than, back end of the season where they're going to be, sort of
double loading there. So, yeah, I think Murphy is definitely a great option if you're on wildcard in that sense for sure. And so, yeah, moving on to an area which I think will have slightly more debate, given it seems to be a bit all over the place, both of our lists, and that is premium mids. So just before we get started on some individual players, we do want to mention the reason Gordon is so low is that he still is serving his suspension. So it would feel almost wrong recommending people in a video going out this week to buy a suspended player. If you are going to bring in Gordon, there is a time to bring him in, and it's not this week. So that is why he's still low down for ours, despite the double. But then, what we do need to mention is Brad has finally got Salah back above Palmer. Not least, I'm sure, because he's no longer blanking. Are you a bit concerned about Palmer, though? I mean, he's still 2 for me as well, but I don't know what's happening with him. Is he injured? Is his head gone? Is Chelsea having problems?
Yeah, form-wise, I'm not particularly concerned there. To be honest, it's more this weird injury situation. He just seems to randomly. I mean, he quite randomly missed out. I mean, maybe it wasn't that random. We just didn't have the information. But yeah, I really don't quite know what's going on there, and I'm not sure. I don't actually know if we will know by this deadline, which is less of an issue this week because it's not a blank game week and you're not benching players that aren't playing. So as long as you've got a bench, it's fine. But yeah, it's not ideal. Especially, it's very, very tough if you're on wildcard as well, because whether or not you include him on wildcard is quite a difficult situation if we don't know any more than we currently know right now. It's a tough one.
Yeah, it's very tricky. I think, obviously he's going to keep his place at second because the list is pretty grim reading after Palmer. But yeah, I think the premium midsection at the moment is the most turbulent it's been all season. Not least, because some of the, even some of the safer assets, traditionally safer assets like Mbuemo, just have horrible fixtures at the moment. But Mbuemo, if you were wildcarding, is Mbuemo touching your team despite the fixtures?
I don't think he is. I don't think he gets in. I don't think he gets anywhere near the team. No, especially given there's doubles and stuff going on at the moment. I don't think you can pick him based on those fixtures. And yeah, like you say, I think anyone. I mean, it's different with Gordon because from next week Gordon's great, but besides that, anyone below, anyone that isn't Salah, Palmer, Fernandes, it's really hard to rank them because they've all got problems. Odegaard gets great minutes, but is less involved than he should be.
It's not a production.
Yeah.
Yep.
Foden, his minutes are a real issue. Bowen, the problem is that West Ham are useless. There's just problems with all of these players. It's really hard to rank them.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, if you are going to look at anyone in this list, it's kind of just Salah, Palmer, Fernandes for now. There's just too much risk attached to the rest of them, especially considering their price points.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that rounds out the midfielder section. We will see you again shortly for the strikers section. Right, welcome back to the forward segment now. We will get started with cheap forwards. So I guess, the logical place to start is the main cheap forward that everyone's considering bringing in, Evan Nilsson. I think there's a bit more skepticism around Bournemouth. They're still good, and their assets are still good, but I'm just not entirely convinced that Evan Nilsson isn't, one of the main options on that team. I think you've got Clivert and Semenyo, they're not exactly feeding into him. They're trying to score goals themselves as well. So I think it's very tough to predict that Bournemouth attack. But yeah, where do you land on Evan Nilsson?
I don't think I do agree with you. I do agree. The goals come from different avenues, but I don't think it matters. I think that, as we've used the analogy before, I think the pie is big enough that any of the 4 or 3 or whoever you want to consider, any of the forwards are good, to be honest. I think the next 2 fixtures are brilliant. Ipswich at home next, West Ham away, Fulham at home. It's just good. The fixtures are just good, and Bournemouth are a very good attacking team.
Yeah, exactly. So if there is someone to be considering on this list, I think Evan Nilsson is is definitely a really good shout. Now, an interesting shout actually that we did want to mention is Strand Larsen. So I actually, I had him on my free hit team and then removed him and swapped him out last minute just because I panicked. I was like, he's actually just a bad footballer, so I took him out. But I mean, he shut me right up, and Wolves' fixtures look, I mean, pretty tasty. West Ham, Ipswich, Spurs, United, Leicester. That's 5 bottom half teams. Who have all been leaking goals. I'm not wrong. That's
You
five
nearly
bottom.
smirked when you said it.
Yeah. But I mean, if you're a striker looking at that set of 5 fixtures, you are licking your lips.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, Strand Larsen, especially at his price point, an intriguing shout there potentially.
Yeah, definitely. I do think that if you were going to consider him, then last week was the time. Now it's easy to say that now that he's scored 13 points, but I feel like we did say that in last week's. We had him pretty high up this list in last week's video. So yeah, although it's not too late, like you say, the fixtures are still very good, and he's very cheap.
Yeah,
he's almost the cheapest on this list. So yeah, definitely one to think about.
Yeah, and if striker is an area that you're trying to save on cost, he is significantly cheaper than Evan Nilsson, for example, or a Wissa. So if you're on wildcard and you're trying to make it fit, then he's definitely a great budget enabler in that sense. And then so João Pedro, I mean, Brighton's fixtures are opening up again. They've got Leicester at home, they've got Palace, Brentford, West Ham at home. Are you willing to get hurt again by João Pedro?
Yeah, I think I would be. I think it's kind of the reason that João Pedro and Welbeck, like you've got João Pedro 3 and Welbeck 10. I've got João Pedro 4 and Welbeck 6. I think that's the difference there is that I don't think
a minute.
Yeah, it's minutes. So I don't think that either of them are that set for minutes. If João Pedro was set for 90 minutes every week, he'd be top of this list for most of the season. So I don't think his minutes are though. He's played good minutes in the last few, yes, and Welbeck hasn't. I just don't know if that continues. It's meaning that I don't trust either of them that much. But the problem is, if João Pedro does get minutes, he is fantastic. The same as Welbeck, to be honest. If Welbeck gets minutes, he's very good. So that's why they're not that low down on this list.
Exactly, and that's why I've got João Pedro at 3 instead of 1 or 2, because there is always that bit of concern, that he just could get rotated out. The reason I do have him at 3 is just because I do feel confident that he will get maybe the lion's share of the minutes compared to Welbeck. But yeah, I mean, he's a risky buy, but we all know he can do. And if Brighton's fixtures are good enough that we could definitely see him hit multiple returns during that stretch. And then another cheap forward to mention. So I mean, he is serving a suspension, but we are clutching at straws when we get deep down this list, and that is Cunha. So he is out for a while, but Wolves' fixtures do stay decent enough that when he does return, he is a potential sneaky option at the back end of these 5.
Yeah, I mean, he misses 2. He misses the first 2 of them, so he gets 3 games in the next 5 game weeks, and he probably misses 2 of the better ones as well. He misses West Ham at home, Ipswich away, but it kind of just shows the quality of this list that 3 games worth of Cunha makes our lists over some really ropey options. So yeah, I do think obviously no one's going to buy him now, of course, but in a couple of weeks' time, I think it'll be worth considering again for sure.
Yeah, completely agree. Now, moving on to premium forwards. All it took was, a double and not blanking in 34, but Brad has finally put Isak above Haaland. I don't think a player is closer to a must-own at the moment than Isak in the entire FPL.
Yeah.
Potentially Salah, actually, but
no,
even then it's close.
Isak is way more of a must-own than Salah right now. A lot more.
Yeah.
There's no good reason not to own Isak right now.
Yeah, like like if you're on wildcard and you don't include Isak in your team, you're an unserious manager. Like I think it, it is. I mean, it is that simple. Also, it's worth mentioning that. So if you were one of the AMers earlier in the season, so you still have your triple captain. Isak in game week 32 is looking like the most viable option to use that triple captainship because you got Man United and Crystal Palace both at home. Both more than capable of leaking plenty of goals, but also it means that you've still got your free hit and your bench boost for that flurry around 34 and 36.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's definitely the time to triple captain, I
that
think.
that that is the situation I'm in. I've used my assistant manager. I've still got my triple captain.
Yeah,
I've penciled in Isak in 32 for that triple captain. The only
yeah,
potential situation that could change that, I think, is if City get a double game week that is not when I'd want a bench boost, which at
yeah,
this point seems a little bit unlikely. But or if City get a double game, if there's a small double game week that involves City, then potentially there's a bench boost 32 option. But at the moment, it seems like the play that triple captain on Isak in 32. So that's my thinking.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, Isak an all-round fantastic option at the moment. No reason not to have him in your teams. And so now I think it's probably the right time to discuss, the return of the man himself, and that is Mateta. So I think quite a few of us were surprised with how quickly he came back, but he's back just in time for that double, and even better, he's wearing a mask. So
Yeah, serious vibes there. I mean, Mateta was great beforehand, but face mask Mateta is going to be different. Well, I mean, we talked about their fixtures. They're not great, but they do double. They potentially don't blank in 34, so they've potentially got 6 fixtures within the
yeah,
next 5 weeks. And I think if you're looking at Palace players, the two standouts are probably Mateta and Munoz. So
mm,
Eze is a great option, obviously, and then there's other options, but I think they're probably the two standouts. So yeah,
yeah,
Mateta is definitely worth considering.
yeah. And also, fixture-wise, when we talk about Palace having bad fixtures, they are way worse fixtures for a Palace defender than they are, for an attacker. Because as we've seen all season, City are more than prone to shipping a few goals. Newcastle have been more than prone to shipping a few goals. Bournemouth have been more than prone to shipping a few goals. I think the scary teams for attackers are the teams that seem to be able to set up really well defensively are more like your Arsenals, your Liverpools, and your Forests. So for attacking fixtures, they're not even, it's not the end of the world basically. So if you were thinking about bringing Mateta in, just bear that in mind that it's not as scary as it might appear, especially on the FDR chart. And I haven't owned Mateta all season, and I think now it's as good an entry point as ever.
Yeah.
I at least want to feel the satisfaction these Mateta owners have been talking about all year.
Yeah, well, me too. I've not owned him either, and I also haven't owned Wood, so I have never felt that either. But I think I may now be going to the end of the season without Wood.
Really?
Interestingly, yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
I was at least on the wood boat, but albeit quite late. So he was hurting me. He has done more damage to me than he has done. He has given me success.
Mm.
But yeah, so on that subject actually, so Chris Wood, normally he'd be a mainstay near the top of what was then the cheap forwards and what is now the premium forwards. But he did pick up an injury on international duty, which we know he's definitely going to miss the cup game. But as of right now, we're recording this on a Friday. We still don't have a huge amount of news on Wood, so don't be spooked and immediately sell him. But also if you are gonna, because Forest fixtures are quite good. If you were thinking about buying him, maybe also hold off on that as well.
Yeah, Forest fixtures are really good to the end of the season, pretty much.
Yeah,
But yeah, don't do anything with him yet. If you own him, don't sell him yet. If you don't own him, don't buy him yet. Just wait to see if we do get more news
yeah,
before the deadline.
yeah. And then the rest of the list kind of I don't know, speaks for itself in terms of that sort of mid tier that no one's going for. But it is worth mentioning. especially for someone like Brad, who had a near-on obsession with him early in the season, that Jackson is nearing a return. So, I mean, he is back in training. So, we do know that he will be re-entering the fold. Is Jackson someone that you will consider bringing back into your teams? There just seems to be so many good options at forward at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know. Certainly not yet. But the problem with that is if you wait, then the fixtures, like their last four from 35 onwards, their fixtures are really rough. So if you're going to do it, you need to do it within the next couple of weeks. There's kind of a window where in game week 32 they play Ipswich at home, Fulham away, Everton at home. If you can get on that 3 game week window, then maybe, and that does give you a couple of weeks to get info on him. So I don't hate it at the moment. It's not really at the forefront of thinking.
Yeah. And also, what, Jackson coming back is also another reason to be slightly optimistic about Palmer. So, even though Palmer has been out of sorts or injured or whatever, for whatever reason, when Jackson is on the pitch, Palmer looks so much better, so much more confident. So I think, Jackson's return will also very much help Palmer in that sense. So, if you were one of the people who's worried about Palmer, considering selling Palmer, moving off him in wildcard, maybe just wait and see how he performs with Jackson back before, panic selling. So that rounds out the forward segment and indeed the FPL player rankings video. Let us know what you think of our lists. Let us know if there's anyone we missed, and we will see you again next week.
And that's all for this one. If you liked the video, do hit like, do subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.